chef to join us, and there he is. Look at that.
Hey, good morning. Good afternoon.
Hey, chef. Sorry, I'm like getting my screen all oriented and trying to get it so we're both on at the same time. How you doing?
I'm doing very well. Good afternoon.
Thanks for joining us on what's become kind of a tradition around here at Tomrick on Fridays in the era of COVID. We've had the privilege of talking to some really great people, but we're super excited that you decided to join us this afternoon, and thank you very much for taking time out of, I'm sure, your very busy schedule to spend some time.
Pleasure to spend a little time. A while.
Cool. So you and I talked a little bit yesterday, and you know, if you haven't seen the format for these, they're just kind of a free-flowing conversation. We'll get some questions on the bottom of the screen at some point from some folks, but you know, we're here to talk a little bit about chocolate and whatever else comes up. So does that sound okay?
Sounds wonderful. Thank you.
So before you came on, I was mentioning to some of the people that were already on that look, they're already calling you a legend, Norman. That's like you're like a superhero. You're like one of the Avengers of chocolate.
I think that just means that I'm old. That means.
All right. Well, we'll talk a little bit of that in a minute, because like I was telling that you don't remember the story, because when you were up a couple months back, I told you about it, but you didn't remember it. That we met for the first time. You were doing a dinner at a Ritz-Carlton in Tyson's Corner, and you were the guest celebrity chef and pastry, and I was on my second day in the bake shop, and you were the chef that Norman's coming, oh my God, Norman's coming, everybody get ready, Norman's coming, and I had no clue who you were because I'd been with the Ritz for 2 days. But I mean, obviously you were with the Ritz for a long time, right?
Just shy of 13 years. Yeah, I spent a large portion of my hospitality life with Ritz, and I feel pretty fortunate, quite blessed that I had the time with them, and certainly have a lot of their early philosophical values that instilled in me and hopefully into my team, and a lot of the way that I live my life today.
But you were with them for a while before you became the corporate pastry chef for the Ritz. So you were at I don't even know what properties you were at, where you were stationed in a bunch of places, right?
I was living in California, in Los Angeles. I was the pastry chef for the Beverly Hills Hotel in the late 80s. And we had our son, my wife, and he knew that it wasn't a place we wanted to raise a child. So I started to look and had the opportunity to open, I think it was hotel number 9 for Ritz-Carlton in the late 89, early 90s. And that began my career with Ritz. Within the first year, I was asked to move to one of their flats, Ritz-Carlton Naples, and coming from Florida, it was a fairly easy transition. It was just really going back home to Florida.
Right.
And that's where my family was raised, and that's where Norman Love Confections 19 years ago was born.
Yeah, I mean, I think I started with the Ritz after the Marriott transition, when there were obviously a lot more properties, and things had begun to change. I mean, obviously the philosophy was a little different. I mean, I think we were still guest focused, but I mean, I think the folks that were from the Ritz-Carlton prior to that transition talk about it being just a different kind of place after the Marriott took over.
Yeah, I think I left. They had purchased, I believe, 49% of the management contracts within the Ritz. I had the pleasure of opening 38 hotels over the course of my career around the world, which certainly was accelerated growth to have the opportunity to see the world, incredible professionals and ingredients. It was an accelerated growth for me, and real honor.
What was your favorite opening?
Favorite would be the worst, or would be the most exciting, or no? It was hands down. Hands down was the Ritz-Carlton Osaka. It was the first time that the Ritz-Carlton Hotel Company had put a pastry shop, cake shop, retail shop into a hotel. I spent almost 3 months in Japan back in the 90s. It was obviously a huge eye-opener. I'm spending time in Tokyo to visit many of the amazing shops and work that was being done there, and then have the opportunity to lead a team of incredibly talented professionals to not only open a large hotel, but also a beautiful retail store.
It's cool. So obviously at some point in there, you made the decision to leave the Ritz-Carlton, And is that where, I mean, it wasn't Norman Love Chocolates at the beginning, right? It was Ganache Chocolatier, something a little different, right? Was that almost an immediate transition? I mean, was that the plan when you left the Ritz, or what were you thinking about when you left the Ritz-Carlton, or did you not know?
I had come back from the Coupe du Monde in 1999, and a friend, from Chocolatier magazine, Pastry Art and Design magazine, Chocolatier magazine, Michael Schneider, and I shared a vision. And at that time, there was really only one competition in the world, and that took place in Lyon every 2 years, which obviously still exists. And we both thought there was an opportunity to potentially expand that and start a competition here in the United States. And we began doing that, as you remember, back in the Beaver Creek, and led to Las Vegas, began to gain some traction, and began to be talked about around the world as a competition that not only had enormous prize money, but a lot of integrity. And it was eventually televised by TV Food Network, and TV Food Network commissioned Michael and I to organize television shows for them, which was called The Challenge. And that was the real reason why I left the Ritz-Carlton originally, about trying to find balance of life, spending more time with my children, because I was on the road more than 40 weeks a year, months at a time. And that took, more than 10 years of my life, and missed a lot of my family. Personal life was certainly sacrificed. So that was a lot of the initiative and a lot of the reason why I left the Ritz, and to pursue, I guess, a production/international pastry competition and education symposium called the Pastry.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously, I mean, I worked for Ooster during some of that time, and, we were around for a lot of that. And I think that time built a career is a bad term, I think, but I mean, it put a lot of the people that we think about as being sort of the building blocks of pastry in front of people other than other professionals, right? The Food Network piece did, at least.
Well, we learned that Americans love to watch pastry chefs in makeshift kitchens doing things, creative, architectural showpieces and things, but, which we really never knew it. But it was interesting to spend some years on those projects, and quite honestly, here in Fort Myers, and I had stopped traveling. We were those shows a few times during the course of the year, and out of concern to supplement my income, we were a new startup company, a production company that I knew very little. Again, the initiative was trying to balance life, family life, right, and started making chocolates in my. That's Norman Love Confections, or back then Ganache Chocolates, began.
Right. I think I'm trying to think what year it was. It was probably 93. Our paths crossed again because I took a class at Awald School where you were teaching with Olivia Bajard, right? And you were there to teach chocolate. Like, I think you were gaining. That was your. I don't want to say it's your thing, but at that point, it sort of seemed like that was at that point where it seemed like a focus at that point where, Olivia was teaching, entremet and mousse and things, but your focus at that point really was artisan style, premium, at that point, European confection. Is that a fair way of looking at that time?
Yeah, and I think that, my global travels helped me understand where I was. Was always the most well-received item on a dessert menu. So I always seemed to lean heavily towards chocolate desserts, and it was the most comfortable medium for me to work in. Coming from and spending most of my years in South Florida, high humidity, sugar never lasted very long, if at all. And it was a lot easier to make chocolate showpieces in the hotel knowing that they would last, and where I began to improve my skill.
So we're back in Florida. I mean, this is what, 90, 94, 95, somewhere in there?
I was living in Naples, or Fort Myers, Florida at that time, yeah.
And you've got this production company, and you're starting this chocolate company, and can you talk a little bit? You now are distributed throughout North America. You're always on the list of one of the top 10 chocolate companies in the United States, and people look at you like, well, I'm watching comments and yeah, we refer to you, somebody, the Godfather and other things that are coming along. And like, how does that transition happen, right? I mean, how does that, obviously, the Ritz-Carlton shows you're a tremendously talented person and you're working with lots of great people, but how do you get this chocolate business? And I think that's something that a lot of people, some of the questions that I've had asked over the last couple of days, how does that happen? Like,
well, the truth of the story is that as I began the production company and I officially left the Ritz-Carlton, a friend of mine had a very small space in an in-home healthcare business that he asked if I wanted to rent a 600 square foot space to run my production company. Michael was in New York. We had offices in Los Angeles. And it was a way for me to get out of the home. And after going 100 miles an hour for many years, it was a place to go. And when I started chocolate, it really was to supplement my income. I was nervous about leaving Ritz, and this was a new, obviously new endeavor, a lot of uncertainty. So I began to make chocolates in my office, and the inspiration, I certainly didn't create the technique that had been popular in showpieces and decor in Europe. And I maybe was one of the first to put it on chocolate. The inspiration was because chocolate looked the same to me. When I opened the box of chocolate with du chocolat or anything between, they always looked the same to me. And I felt as though there was a lot of artistic expression and experience, especially to dessert, loading at that time, but it didn't exist in chocolate. So why couldn't factor? Why couldn't some of when I open a box of chocolates have the same impression, have the weight factoring, beautiful artistic expression? So this was a lot of the inspiration of applying colored cocoa butter to molds. I used to get a lot of crap back when from a lot of my friends around the world that you can't put red or green or blue on chocolate. And very proud and honored to see today that in some of my travels that the world enjoys putting color and artistic expression to effect.
Right. So I have a question to ask that has nothing to do with chocolate. You don't happen to have a headset with you, do you?
I do not.
Okay. You're just cutting in and out a little bit from some of the comments that people are making. So,
okay. Should I talk loud?
And I don't know if that's going to help. I think that's not I think it has to do with the feed, but we'll struggle through. So, in kind of going back to that class, I mean, Olivier Bajard gave you crap in that class about using blue colored cocoa butter because he said in that class, blue does not belong on food. Food is not blue. And I don't know what your response to that was at that point. I went back to work. And
you have an incredible memory because I don't remember any of it. However, Olivier and I were very, very, very close friends, and he certainly was a huge inspiration to me as one of the premier talents in the world. And to have the opportunity to teach classes with him was obviously learning as well as just a humbling experience. Yes, it was the American guy that had this vision back in the early 2000s, and a polished muff professional that that was on top of his profession at the highest level. So it was an interesting combination of talents, but we really enjoyed working together. So I'm admit that I didn't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I think, but you're right. I mean, there were some transfer sheets in this country. The PCB had just started to import transfer sheets at that point in time. Really, they were the only people that had colored cocoa butter in this country, but you were still ordering it direct from France in the early 90s, right?
It's actually before that. It was DGF that was the very first, and they had powdered colors.
Right.
And the colors, you had to mix yourself, which was a lot of time to clean them and to mix them properly and to pass them and strain them and burn mix them and to get them prepared. So, we're spoiled today with a lot of great companies like Chef Rubber and others that are preparing wonderful colored cocoa butters. So, but back then you had to mix them really on the marble was really began because they were extremely granular.
Right. So you start chocolate to get out of the house. I mean, it sounds like. I mean, is your wife watching? I don't want to say that if that's not entirely the case. But
No, it's the case. No, she's not watching.
okay. And you're in 600 square feet and you're making chocolate and like, who are you selling to at that point?
Because I had spent a lot of time in networking for the Ritz, I knew a lot of pastry chefs. And the problem for me was I was in Southwest Florida, and how could you possibly chocolate in 100+ degree weather via FedEx or UPS and prevent it from melting? So it was obviously a big challenge for me. So I used to drive it early on to hotels from Tampa to Marco Island. And again, I was making these chocolates, putting them into a box. In fact, I was looking for packaging 9/11 at the bakery show in Las Vegas. I was there myself looking for a packaging designer because I had this idea of starting a chocolate company. And it was, I was there on 9/11, and I remember there was a quick exodus of everyone, so the show really never went on. But I met a Japanese guy that had some beautiful generic packaging, and that was really the beginning of my chocolate packaging career. But a lot of obstacles. I mean, learning how to ship chocolate in heat sensitive product in a hot environment was a big obstacle early on that we found. Pharmaceuticals came to this pharmacy, this in-home healthcare that I was renting space, and they asked if I could use the insulated box, and I ended up calling this gentleman he was in outside of Atlanta, Georgia, and learned that it was a biodegradable insulation that was used for blood and plasma organs like that to ship, super temperature controlled, and it really helped me to kind of revolutionize and spread my wings in the confectionery business, and enabled me to ship chocolate around the country. But that was some of the early days.
Yeah, I was at that same plant at a later time, and I remember those guys saying something to the effect of like, if we can get a human heart to somebody in the right temperature in 24 hours, we can probably get your pastry there. It's just whether or not you want to pay for it. Right? I mean, it's about the technology. The technology is always there. It's about cost and about time, right?
Absolutely. And as a chocolatier coming out of the Ritz-Carlton, I wanted the entire experience to be perfect, so that from the time you placed an order until you received the chocolate, that it was a perfect execution and that they were being delivered properly and unaffected by any of the elements. So over the course of years, I mean, we have now shipped almost 75,000 shipments per year. Our e-commerce business has really excelled over the last 4 years. In fact, we're in the process and a little bit on the pause button currently, but hopefully we'll work towards building a very new facility of around 60,000 square feet is what we're currently looking at. And possibly moving our fulfillment center to a few places around the country, which will reduce the cost of shipping and allow us to compete with Amazon with free shipping nationally.
Got it. You did mention that you're on pause. How are things in Florida with the world? And here in New York, we got the go-ahead to begin the reopening on Tuesday, so we're kind of getting started here in Western New York. But I know Florida's a little ahead of the country. I mean, you had to close all your retail locations, or what were you doing with retail?
Well, actually, we were pretty fortunate that we fall under essential for a few reasons. One is that we're a manufacturer. Retail was allowed to stay open with takeout only. So all of our retail stores remained open. We also service 22 grocery stores in the state of Florida, Whole Foods. So we have the ability we had the ability to continue to manufacture and ship. So although our operation and of course retail operations have slowed down considerably, over the course of the last 8 to 10 weeks, Florida is opening up probably a little bit farther along, maybe 2 or 3 weeks than New York. We are close to phase 2. We are full phase 1 as of last week. Restaurants are allowed 50% occupancy. Our retail stores and traffic on the roads, and people are out and about a lot more than they have been in the last 4 weeks. So, we're optimistically cautious, but hopeful that things will change in the near future. We certainly hope so.
Yeah, that's been sort of the general sentiment talking to people over the last couple of weeks. That, I mean, obviously a huge portion of your business is already internet and that was the folks that have invested in that technology over the last couple of years have weathered a little better than the chocolatiers that it's all kind of walk-in store business. And that mix of wholesale definitely helps. I mean, but was internet a strategy? I mean, was internet originally a plan? I mean, was that kind of the thought, or was it really, it wasn't a retail strategy, right, for you?
I think when we began in 2000 and when we first developed the website, there were most American consumers were nervous or reluctant about transacting online. We all have seen over the course of 5, 6, 7 years the incredible growth. It is also the fastest sector of my business and growth, and COVID has actually accelerated that. I think that people that have stayed at home and have had stay-at-home orders across the country have found that e-commerce is not only convenient and easy, but they're becoming more and more comfortable. So we actually grew a lot over Easter and Mother's Day, more so than my company was actually prepared for.
Right. And you mentioned Amazon a couple minutes ago. I mean, is Amazon Prime really pushing on what you are allowed to charge, what you can charge for shipping and packaging and that, or does there have to be a strategy, do you think, to move towards dropping the price of shipping as the price of shipping actually goes up, right? I mean, FedEx is a lot more expensive today than it was 5 years ago, for example.
Yeah, I think that e-commerce in general, there's a lot of strategies surrounding, and each year we're getting better at it. We have some very great professionals in that area that understand digital marketing and understanding how to put people into the funnel with the hopes of transacting. And that continues to grow each and every holiday. We're getting a little bit better of the type of Instagram post, the type of Facebook post that we're doing, and what works best. And at the end of the day, I think consumers online are looking for deals at some point. Whether it's free shipping or discounted product seems to energize people to spend money. So we've been doing a lot of exploring and finding and figuring what's the best combination and solution to push e-com, but without question is exploding right now. To the degree that I can't make enough chocolate during peak times. That's how busy it's become on a major holiday: Christmas, Valentine's, obviously Easter, Mother's Day.
Right. I mean, so is that, do you have to find more efficiencies then in your production facility, or do you have to find, I mean, like, you never want sales to be the bottleneck, right? I mean, you really want the bottleneck to be somewhere else. So you got to find efficiencies to solve that problem. And, obviously you've grown out of that 600 square foot place, and you're looking at, 6,000 square feet and consolidating. And I mean, how do you find efficiencies in a business like that, you've been running for a while and you're successful? I mean, you've got to keep looking for new things then to find efficiencies.
Yeah, I think that as we grew over the course of these last 10, 15 years, we kept expanding and piecemealing our competencies together. So the pastry operation, bakery, gelato is separate from chocolate. Fulfillment is separate from those two areas. So it's really important today, as we continue to grow and with some of the strategic planning, is to find one roof to house everything so that we can streamline and become more efficient in what we do. Pastry chefs and chocolatiers are extremely resilient, and we always seem to figure out how to get the job done because our kitchens are never perfect, or have the proper equipment. So it's just a combination of an incredibly talented staff that are very committed to doing something correct, as well as providing the environment that's conducive for the expansion. So this is what we're working on currently. I've made some big trips around the world to look at some interesting manufacturing operations, both pastry and chocolate, that requires some very high-level equipment, as we have opportunities, and we would like to approach those opportunities. But at the moment, I don't have the ability to produce the volume that's being asked of, so at the quality I would like. So we're exploring all opportunities at this point.
Yeah, I was talking to a friend earlier in the day, and we were talking a little bit about some of that stuff. And as a pastry chef, I think our first solution is always throw more people at the problem, right? I mean, right. If it takes 5 people an hour to do it, and we need it done in 30 minutes, then we put 10 people on it, and it gets done. And that's probably a culinary answer. I don't think that's a pastry answer, right? But somewhere in there, you run out of people, and you run out of that's not always the solution, right? I mean, working harder is not always the solution. It's finding a way to work smarter.
Yeah,
right?
we always seem as pastry chefs, you just work harder and longer, and throw people is so accurate. And that has been our challenges, is eventually there's no more room for people, and you can't produce a larger number without compromising the integrity, and that's not what I want to do. So we're going to carefully construct and create hopefully a new factory that's more efficient, that allows us to produce more product and not compromise what it is that we do, because that's really not interesting to me.
Yeah, we were talking to, we've had some other big people that do a lot of internet in the last couple of weeks, and we were talking to Christopher Elbow about some of that a couple of weeks ago, and it's finding that balance, right? That because he's built a brand new factory in the last year and has solved a lot of the problems, right? So it makes sense. There's fulfillment is in the same building, and this is happening, and you find that you kind of move some of those problems and pieces around a little bit, and he's always looking for that solution as well, right? How do you become more efficient but yet keep the quality where you want it to be while still be creative, right? Because we don't want to just be the $3 box of chocolate at the drugstore, right? I mean, that's really the goal, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's a fine balance between artisanal and smart business, but making sure that you're still producing quality product. Innovation and continuous improvement is a big part of what we do and who we all are. So as a company, we're continuously looking and creating. In fact, we have just completed a whole vegan line of products that are delicious. And our involvement with Whole Foods today is screaming for this product. And I think that we've worked hard to try to make something that's delicious and also 100% vegan. So it's exciting to me, as so many dietary restrictions or different types of eating habits today have really changed the way that we think. People that are sugar-free, certainly in Southwest Florida, that have dietary restrictions for sugar, gluten-free, and of course, vegetarians and vegans that are plant-based products that are becoming more and more and more popular. So it's becoming, a necessity to look in those directions and try to make things that are equally as delicious, and quite a challenge for my team. So we feel as though we've got some things that we're excited to release soon.
So those will be online soon. They're not there today, so don't run over to the website right now.
Not yet. Designing in the packaging stages right now. So I think in another 30 days or so, they should be up online and in all of our stores.
So the question got answered below. Norman, do you actually make your pastries now, or are you still using frozen mass-produced products?
What does that?
I mean, you have pastry chefs and you're making desserts in your store, or at your consolidated facility, right?
Yes, so we have 38,000 square feet of combined facility currently. Our pastry operation is about 6,000 square feet, and we produce desserts 7 days a week.
And a super talented pastry chef there too. I mean, you've built a really great team around you, right? I mean, you have a head chocolatier on your team, and you have a pastry chef, and you've got some really super talented folks that are helping you see that vision. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Of course, I think that's essential for any business, is to surround yourself with incredibly talented people. I think that's the foundation of success, and give them the tools they need and empower them to be creative is all very essential things in order to find success.
Yeah, so I got asked a couple of weeks ago about I got to ask a question about what is on your Netflix list that people would be surprised by. And I told him that, and I'm not going to ask you that question, so you don't have to tell me, but I said that one of the things that was on my Netflix list was Julia Child. So when I'm having that day and I need to sort of fall back on something, I fall back to Julia Child. And so you had the pleasure of meeting Julia Child and getting to work with Julia Child, right? You got to do a show with Julia Child at one point and on the Great Baker series, right? If memory serves me, at one point.
I did have the opportunity to work with Julia back in the 90s. I was introduced to a gentleman who produced her television shows for PBS and through Ritz-Carlton, and it led to an opportunity to participate in her TV series, which was called Baking with Julia, which was filmed in her home in Cambridge. So we filmed two. Yeah, absolutely, they should be. Don't you agree?
We're taking care of it right now.
Yeah. So probably disgruntled employees. What do you think?
I try not to worry about it. Like I've the world. How about this, Norman? I'll wax for a moment. Like the world is kind of not a great place right now, and I think we'd be better served if we were a little nicer to each other right now. Like that's me getting on my soapbox and me saying things that I don't think you have to, but I don't understand the need to get on the internet and say negative things about one another. Like there's enough bad stuff going on in the world right now. It's not, I don't have time for it. And I try to ignore it. Like that's me, being, I guess, how I feel. I mean, that's my personal opinion. And we've wandered off and you're telling us a great story that I really wanted to hear about. And
but thank you for your comments. I appreciate them. As far as Julia was concerned, it certainly was one of the highlights of my career. Sitting and working with her in her kitchen for 2 episodes was not only inspirational, but she was so witty and she was so lovely. And I had the ability to sit and have lunch with her in her garden, and it was just a really special time for me, one that I cherish every day, and to know that I had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with her is really special.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was the original TV chef, right? I mean, like in a lot of ways, and I think, we didn't talk about it before. I had the opportunity to do Food Network Challenge after, as Food Network took that over by themselves, and I don't feel like I get that opportunity, to do that, and the gifts I've been given because of that, without the National Pastry Championship, right, which kind of created that. And I don't think that has an opportunity to be there without, people like Julia Child. So I think, I'm incredibly grateful for that wit and those things that you're talking about, that you had the opportunity to spend time one-on-one. And I feel like I got to see those things on TV, and I still do, even the old black and white episodes that I watch, and gave me an opportunity to be some of the pastry chef that I became. And I'm really waxing. Now I'm really wandered off the reservation a little bit, but I mean, I think it's important, right?
No, she's an inspiration probably to every culinarian in this country or even in the world. And, I feel pretty blessed and special that I had the opportunity to spend time with Julia, and I think it's true with any great professional that you have the ability to work with, spend time with, that you have, a moment of, ability to educate each other is just special time. And it's time, within our community, within the culinary community, that's how ideas grow, and that's how we all grow as professionals.
Yeah, Paul's on here, and Paul is Pastry Live, and he's talking about that path, right? And I think one of the reasons it was so special for you to be here today was that you helped to really build that path in North America and the United States for this whole new line of American chocolatiers, and I think we're grateful to you. I'm being honest, that I think without you really cutting down some of those limbs out of the way, I don't think the chocolate industry in North America is what it is. It wouldn't be the same without you and what you did.
I think, thank you very much for their kind words. I honestly think that that I may have been a chocolatier, pastry chef turned chocolatier, like a few of us in the early days, and happened to be very passionate. But you look at the industry today, and there is so much talent. There's been a lot of talent that has passed through my business that has certainly helped to grow my company. And as I said earlier, it's always been very important for me to allow and encourage my team to be creative so that they feel part of what they're doing versus just doing a task every day. So I feel pretty lucky that over the course of years, I've had a lot of talent that came through that have contributed to who we are today. And I certainly am appreciative of that.
Yeah, I'm seeing some names flipping through about, people are talking about people that have worked for you and around with you and how grateful people are. But I saw Maura pop through there a minute ago, and, that's somebody who, she was with you a really long time, and had the opportunity, I know, to grow and become really her own person, with a really super talented chef on her own that's not connected, yes, obviously spent time with you, like we all have people we work with, right? So, but I think that's great. Like who's that person for you? Like who do you think about in your career, some of those people that you've had the opportunity to work with that you've learned from and you're better because they were part of your life?
I think Olivier is certainly one of those people, and I had the pleasure of spending time with Pierre May, and he's always been one of my idols. He's a real inspiration and revolutionized modern dessert today. So many of the Ritz-Carlton pastry chefs and so many of my staff members, I think that I easily get inspired. I love when people express themselves and have motivation to be better, to be the best. It motivates me, and it's a lot of the philosophical values that exist here in my company is that I'm always encouraging my team to be and create newness within my company. And obviously Maura was with me for 16 years. She's my second daughter and a very special woman, and I'm forever grateful for all the hard work. And she was in the trenches at the very beginning when we started the Godiva project on G,
Right.
working part-time for me, and she helped to develop and mold Norman Love Confections as to what they are today. She was instrumental, and I'm forever in her debt.
That's great. So this is a question I ask everybody. So you're headed home. It's been a long day. It's like 10:30 at night. You have to stop and get some gas for the car, and you wander into the 7-Eleven to pay for it, and you decide you're going to pick up a Diet Coke and a candy bar. What candy bar do you pick up at the 7-Eleven at 11:30 at night?
So it won't be a Diet Coke ever. I don't drink soda.
Okay.
I haven't for a long time. I used to have a horrible addiction to Coca-Cola a year.
All right, you have a bottle of water.
Probably
and a kid.
A Kit Kat, probably.
That's the first right answer that anybody's given in 6 weeks of that question. So thank you, Norman. I love you that much more because you answered Kit Kat, but just regular Kit Kat, right? No mint flavor, no.
No, that probably would be the go-to, or M&Ms maybe, a peanut or caramel M&Ms maybe as a second. But I.
So, because I have to ask, because like the Philly kid in me. So you grew up in Philadelphia, right? And you left in high school time. Is that?
My family moved from Philadelphia in 1973. I was going into the 10th grade, and I moved to Hollywood, Florida. My father was transferred, and I was a big hockey kid when I was younger. I loved hockey. It was I still play as the old-time beer leagues today, but or old man beer leagues. But as a young kid, I really aspired to hopefully play in college, and a lot of my friends, we played a lot of hockey as a kid in the outside of Philly. And when I moved, I was pretty crushed. There was hockey didn't exist in Southwest Florida in 1973, so I got a job making ice cream. It was my high school job. I didn't know anyone in school, and that's how this craziness began in probably in 1974.
Still a Flyers fan? Or have you become like a Panthers fan?
So the Flyers, no, I am not a Flyers fan. I'm a bit of a traitor as I crossed the state and have been a Penguins fan for quite a long time since Crosby arrived.
Okay, we'll give you that. So a great question came up from somebody about, we learn more from our failures. What's one of your greatest lessons learned?
I mean, there's a lot of them, for sure. And we all make mistakes, and especially in business. I think that, I think there's so many of them. I think that I think probably the biggest challenge that I've had in business was trying to overcome finding personnel in Southwest Florida early on, taking on the Godiva contract where we were producing the G line and creating that early on, and trying to learn to differentiate between a pastry chef mentality and a manufacturer's mentality. And because, as you had mentioned earlier, a pastry chef just works harder and longer. That's our mentality. But learning to follow good manufacturing practices, good food safety. We've evolved a lot. We have food safety managers on staff now, and our business has grown up a lot. But early on, it was quite the challenge to learn to work efficiently at larger scale. And still not compromise the integrity of our chocolate. And I think this was probably one of the biggest and hardest lessons that we needed to overcome, and finding staff that were committed and wanted to be part of who we are and what we were doing.
It's great. So I promised you only 45 minutes, so we're getting close to that 45 minutes. And so thank you very much for spending some time on a holiday weekend with us, headed into a holiday weekend. And everything's available on the website except for that vegan line, which will be soon, right?
Absolutely.
So if you came here from the Tomric site, go over and like Norman's site on Instagram and Facebook and all that good stuff. And then if you're coming from the Norman site, we're Tomric Systems, and feel free to welcome us to do that. And my Instagram is Brian Donaghy, and you can like me there too. And then one question for you to think about: we would love to have you design a custom mold for Tomric. So you think about that, and you can let me know some other time and we'll add it to the line, and we'll do something cool with it if you want to do it.
Maura Matheny is laughing right now, that's for sure, and that's an inside joke. However, it would be a pleasure. And Brian, thank you so much for the opportunity, and for all the professionals that have joined and listened to our interview. It's a pleasure. I wish that everyone stays healthy and safe, and enjoy this holiday weekend.
Great, Norman. We'll talk soon, I hope, and thank you very much. There's Maura saying, yup. There she is. Yup. All right, thanks, Norman. We'll talk.
All the best.
All right. Bye. Bye-bye.